On April 20th, 1989, around 8 p.m., Peggy Bueller was driving her father through Circle, Montana, a small rural town. The tranquil evening took a dramatic turn when Peggy noticed a car ahead suddenly swerve into her lane, speeding directly toward her. Thinking fast, she veered onto the shoulder of the highway and narrowly avoided the oncoming Chevy Nova, which sped past her. The car behind Peggy wasn't so fortunate. The Nova collided head-on with another vehicle driven by Carol Heights, an off-duty police dispatcher. The violent crash left both vehicles mangled, but miraculously, Carol managed to escape her car with only minor injuries. Disoriented, she stumbled to the side of the road and sat in the grass, trying to process what had just happened. That's when she saw the driver of the Nova. A blonde woman climbed out of the wreckage, seemingly unharmed. She walked over to Carol, stopping silently in front of her. Carol later recalled, "She just stared at me. Never said anything, just stared." After a few moments, the woman turned away and walked into the darkness of the surrounding prairie, climbing over a small fence and vanishing into the night. Meanwhile, Peggy had turned her car around to check on the crash victims. As she approached, she noticed a figure standing eerily still in a nearby field. She stood there like a spectator, Peggy said, not like it had happened to her. Moments later, the figure disappeared into the darkness. Another driver who witnessed the crash quickly sought help, driving to a nearby farmhouse to call the police. When authorities arrived, they began searching the area but found no trace of the mysterious woman. However, the wreckage left behind provided clues to her identity. Inside the Nova, police found personal items, including a suitcase packed with clothing, suggesting she was traveling. The driver was identified as 37-year-old Patricia Bernadette Meehan, a ranch hand from Bozeman, Montana, located about 400 miles from the crash site. Among Patricia's belongings, her family discovered an undeveloped roll of film. One photo stood out, a self-portrait of Patricia captured in a mirror, her expression blank and her eyes vacant. This haunting image is believed to be the last photo ever taken of her. When officers contacted Patricia's parents, they learned she had been acting unusually in the days leading up to the crash. The night before, Patricia had called home, asking if she could stay with them for a while. Her father, Thomas, agreed but noticed she sounded stressed and disoriented. Patricia mentioned she had a therapy appointment scheduled for April 21st. Thomas suggested she attend the session before making any decisions about traveling, hoping she could gather herself first. She never made it to that appointment. As search teams combed the area surrounding the crash site, they found footprints matching Patricia's shoes, leading about 3/4 of a mile into the prairie. But the trail abruptly ended, leaving searchers puzzled. Sniffer dogs picked up her scent but lost it in the field, suggesting she may have doubled back to the road and hitched a ride. Sheriff Robert Jensen commented on the strange circumstances. "If she were injured badly, we'd have found her in the grass by daylight. There's really nowhere to hide out here." Despite thorough searches of nearby coal mines, open shafts, and even aerial sweeps of the prairie, no trace of Patricia was found. Friends and family struggled to understand why Patricia had driven 5 hours to Circle, Montana. At 34, Patricia decided to drop out and move to Bozeman, where she pursued her dream of working with animals, especially horses. While Patricia appeared to enjoy her new life as a ranch hand, it wasn't without challenges. Financial stress and a gradual decline in her mental health led some to believe she was in the midst of a breakdown. Her mother, Dolly, later speculated that Patricia may have felt unfulfilled or disappointed with her life, possibly triggering a personal crisis. Weeks after the crash, reports of Patricia began surfacing hundreds of miles away. On May 4th, 1989, a police officer in Luverne, Minnesota, spotted a blonde woman sitting alone in a Hardee's restaurant. She seemed out of place, sipping a glass of water. Hours later, she moved to a nearby diner where the officer attempted to speak with her. She gave conflicting answers about her identity, first claiming she was from Israel, then Colorado, before refusing to speak further. The officer later recognized her as Patricia Meehan, realizing the encounter had occurred 2 weeks after her disappearance and nearly 800 miles from Circle. 2 more sightings followed the next day. A waitress at a truck stop in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, reported a woman matching Patricia's description sitting alone and laughing to herself for nearly 12 hours. Later that evening, another waitress in Murdo, South Dakota, saw Patricia speaking with an unidentified man before they left separately. These sightings left Patricia's parents torn between relief and worry. "This is not like her," Dolly said. "We think she has amnesia. She's confused and scared. We don't think she knows who she is." Throughout May and June, the Meehans traveled across Montana and neighboring states, following up on tips and sightings. They stopped at diners and truck stops, showing Patricia's photo to anyone who would listen. Some claimed to have seen her, including at a horse auction in Billings, Montana, but these leads were never confirmed. The final verified sighting came on May 19th at a diner near Patricia's home in Bozeman. A waitress described a disoriented woman asking to be served quickly before sitting at a table, talking to herself for over an hour. Despite this sighting, Patricia's trail once again went cold. By June, with funds running low, the Meehans were forced to return to Pennsylvania without answers. Patricia's case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries later that year, generating thousands of tips. However, none provided definitive leads. Nightclub Fire. On the morning of January 27, 2013, followers of DJ Bellina's Facebook page saw what appeared to be a typical nightclub photo. The image showed the Kiss nightclub in Brazil, illuminated with purple lights, a live band performing on stage, and a crowd packed tightly together. At first glance, it was a scene of lively celebration. However, shortly after this photo was uploaded, an unthinkable tragedy unfolded. During the performance, stage pyrotechnics ignited the soundproofing foam in the ceiling, sparking a catastrophic fire. The nightclub was overcrowded, lacked adequate fire escapes, and safety measures were grossly insufficient. The chaos that ensued left hundreds injured and resulted in 242 fatalities, marking it as the second deadliest fire in Brazil's history. The aftermath remains a painful memory for survivors, families, and the community, with haunting images of people desperately trying to escape the inferno, as firefighters and Good Samaritans worked to rescue those trapped inside. Born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Scott grew up in a working-class family. His father, Frank, was a truck driver, and his mother, Patricia, was a homemaker. In 1968, the family relocated to Michigan. 2 years later, Scott's parents divorced, and he ended up living with his father, along with his 2 brothers and sister. At 17, Scott dropped out of high school but joined the Army, where he earned his GED and trained in satellite communications. After 3 years of service, he was honorably discharged as a specialist. Scott later worked in various technical communications roles before transitioning to bartending, a job that fit his love for the nightlife. The story takes place during the height of the 1990s daytime talk show era, where shock value often drove ratings. The Jenny Jones Show, a popular program at the time, thrived on sensational topics, from makeovers to controversial personal revelations. In March 1995, the show planned an episode on secret crushes, where participants would surprise their admirers on national television. Scott wrote to the show to confess his crush on a man named Jonathan Schmitz, a 24-year-old acquaintance he met through a mutual friend, Donna. Unbeknownst to Jonathan, the producers invited him to participate, teasing that the admirer could be either a man or a woman. Jonathan, assuming it might be his ex-fiancée, agreed to appear. During the taping, Scott revealed his feelings for Jonathan, describing fantasies and how he had been drawn to him since their first meeting. The audience reacted with laughter and shock. While Jonathan appeared to handle the revelation calmly on stage, he later confessed to feeling deeply humiliated and uncomfortable. After the show, the situation took a dark turn. Back home, Jonathan found a suggestive note from Scott, which reportedly pushed him over the edge. Consumed by anger, Jonathan withdrew money from the bank, purchased a shotgun, and drove to Scott's home. After confronting him about the note, Jonathan returned to his car, seemingly deliberating his next move. Moments later, he reapproached Scott's door and fatally shot him twice in the chest. Jonathan immediately called 911, tearfully confessing to the crime. During his trial, his defense team argued he had been provoked, claiming he suffered from mental health issues. including manic depression, and had been drinking and using drugs before the murder. They also invoked the controversial gay panic defense, arguing that Jonathan's reaction stemmed from fear and humiliation over Scott's homosexuality. Scott's family blamed the Jenny Jones show, alleging the producers had irresponsibly orchestrated the situation for entertainment. Initially, a civil jury awarded the family $25 million in damages, holding the show accountable. However, the verdict was overturned on appeal, absolving the show of legal responsibility. Jonathan was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison. After serving 22 years, he was released on parole in 2017, sparking renewed outrage over the case. Some people on social media may appear ordinary, but beneath the surface, they may conceal dark secrets or dangerous tendencies. This was unsettlingly highlighted by the TikTok account Spirits and Such Consulting, which amassed around 20,000 followers. The account was run by a girl who appeared to be a typical teenager, sharing content about anime, dancing, and lighthearted jokes about her father. However, online investigators later discovered that the account was linked to Claire Miller, a young woman convicted of murdering her disabled sister in 2021. Prosecutors claimed that Miller had an obsession with homicide and was reportedly fearful of harming herself or others. Following the tragic incident, her family pleaded for leniency from the court, expressing hope that Claire could receive proper mental health treatment in a clinical environment. The TikTok videos were created before her arrest, with the last one uploaded just a day before the fatal incident. Claire Miller was ultimately convicted of third-degree murder and is now serving her sentence in prison. Samantha Koenig, an 18-year-old from Anchorage, Alaska, was a bright and ambitious young woman. Born on August 30, 1993, she had a passion for animals and dreamed of becoming a doctor or a nurse, even considering joining the Navy. To support herself, Samantha worked part-time at a coffee stand in downtown Anchorage, a job she found both manageable and fulfilling, despite her boyfriend's concerns about her working late shifts alone. On the evening of February 1, 2012, Samantha's life took a horrifying turn. Just minutes before the coffee stand was set to close, a man in a ski mask approached and ordered a drink. After she prepared his Americano, he pointed a gun at her and demanded she turn off the lights. Samantha complied, and the man entered through the service window. Surveillance cameras captured the chilling events, but they couldn't prevent what came next. The man restrained Samantha and led her to his truck after she disclosed she didn't have a car, and her boyfriend would soon arrive to pick her up. Once in the truck, the man reassured her he only wanted a ransom and promised she would be freed if her family paid. Despite Samantha's attempts to reason with him, he remained unyielding. He then returned to the coffee stand to retrieve her phone, sending misleading messages to her boyfriend and boss to create the illusion that she had left town voluntarily. Afterward, he disabled the phone and drove her to a shed on his property. Samantha's family quickly realized something was wrong. Her boyfriend didn't believe the messages were from her, and when she failed to come home, her family reported her disappearance to the police. Investigators reviewed the coffee stand's surveillance footage, which confirmed her abduction, but the masked perpetrator left no identifying details. The FBI joined the case, and Samantha's family raised $41,000 as a reward for her safe return. Weeks later, Samantha's family received a chilling message directing them to a dog park, where they found a ransom note and a Polaroid of Samantha holding a February 13th newspaper. The kidnapper demanded $30,000 to be deposited into her bank account. Following his instructions, the family deposited the money in small increments, allowing investigators to track his ATM withdrawals. Despite his attempts to disguise himself and travel across multiple states, the FBI identified his vehicle, a white Ford Focus, through surveillance footage. On March 13, 2012, Texas Highway Patrol officers stopped a vehicle matching the description. Inside was Israel Keys, a 34-year-old construction worker. A search of his car revealed Samantha's phone, her boyfriend's bank card, and various tools for disguise. Keys, who had no prior criminal record, lived with his girlfriend and daughter, making his arrest even more shocking. Under interrogation, Keyes confessed to the crime in chilling detail. He admitted to abducting Samantha with no initial plan to kill her. However, after securing her boyfriend's bank card, he returned to the shed, where he assaulted and murdered her. The photo and ransom note sent weeks later were part of an elaborate scheme. By then, Samantha had already been killed. Keyes staged the photo. He thawed Samantha's body with a hairdryer, sewed her eyes open, and applied makeup to make her appear alive for the ransom photo. After the murder, Keyes went on a pre-planned cruise with his family, leaving Samantha's body in the frozen shed. Upon returning, he dismembered her remains and disposed of them in a lake, using a chainsaw to cut through the ice. During his interrogation, Keyes confessed to being a serial killer with a long history of murders. Over 14 years, he claimed to have killed at least 11 people across the United States. He revealed chilling details of his methods. He would bury kill kits, containers filled with weapons, zip ties, and tools to dispose of bodies, in various locations around the country. These kits allowed him to strike randomly and evade detection for years. Keyes was methodical, choosing victims at random to avoid patterns that could lead to his capture. His known victims included Bill and Lorraine Currier, a couple from Vermont whom he kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in 2011. He also confessed to multiple bank robberies and arson, which he used to fund his crimes. Israel Keyes' reign of terror ended with his arrest, but he took many secrets to his grave. On December 2, 2012, while awaiting trial for Samantha's murder, Keyes committed suicide in his jail cell. Authorities found a blood-stained suicide note, but it contained no names or specific details about his other victims. They also discovered 11 skulls drawn in his blood, symbolizing his murders. Walrus Attack. Jolly June, a visitor at the Shishako Wildlife Park in China, believed he had formed a unique bond with a walrus during his trip. He documented his experience on WeChat, expressing fascination with the animal's size and strength. Tragically, this fascination turned fatal when he made a critical mistake. While inside the walrus's enclosure, Jolly turned his back on the massive creature to take a selfie. In a sudden move, the walrus grabbed him and pulled him into the water. Zoo staff later suggested that the animal may have been acting playfully rather than out of aggression, but the situation quickly escalated. Both Jolly and a zookeeper who attempted to rescue him drowned during the struggle. On the evening of April 17, 2021, 40-year-old Erica Hernandez was captured on a Ring doorbell camera, leaving her brother and sister-in-law's home in Houston, Texas. This footage would be the last known sighting of Erica alive before her mysterious disappearance. Earlier that day, Erica and her mother spent time preparing food, which she planned to share with friends and family. When most of her guests couldn't attend, Erica decided to deliver the meals herself to avoid wasting the food. Around 8:10 p.m., Erica arrived at her sister-in-law, Eldia Hernandez's house, with her 3 children, ages 3, 15, and 19, waiting in the car. She chatted with Eldia for about 5 minutes before leaving to drop her kids back home. Later that evening, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Erica visited her best friend Maggie to deliver more food. According to Maggie, Erica stayed until about 2:30 a.m. Concerned for her friend's safety, Maggie texted Erica to ensure she made it home safely. At 3:04 a.m., Erica replied, saying she was 5 minutes away. However, when Maggie followed up a few minutes later, she received no response. When Erica's family couldn't reach her the following day, they grew alarmed. Her loved ones insisted it was out of character for Erica to disappear, especially since she would never leave her children behind. Her kids were her world. The Houston Police Department, Texas EquuSearch, the FBI, and dozens of volunteers launched an intensive search for Erica and her vehicle. Search teams scoured the routes Erica might have taken, and local hospitals were contacted to check for unidentified patients matching her description. Despite these efforts, no leads emerged. Her family remained in disbelief, with Eldia expressing the collective heartbreak. This is not like her. This is not her routine. Almost a month after Erica disappeared, on May 11, 2021, her SUV was found submerged in a retention pond near Reflection Bay and North Clear Lake in Shadow Creek Ranch. The Galveston County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that the body inside the vehicle was Erica Hernandez. The cause of death was determined to be drowning, with the manner of death ruled accidental. Investigators revealed that FBI-gathered data led them to the retention pond. Evidence at the scene suggested Erica's SUV struck a curb and plunged into the water. The vehicle was located at the bottom of the pond, submerged in 8 to 15 feet of water, with damage consistent with hitting the curb. Authorities believe the SUV had been in the pond since the night Erica went missing. Video footage and cell phone data helped reconstruct Erica's movements that night. After leaving Maggie's home around 2:30 a.m., Erica visited another friend, leaving their home at 4:05 a.m. At 4:24 a.m., surveillance footage captured Erica's vehicle turning onto Reflection Bay from Shadow Creek Parkway, the route that led to the retention pond. Investigators confirmed that Erica's travel times and locations aligned with her usual route home. No evidence of foul play was found. On July 6, 1988, one of the most devastating offshore oil disasters unfolded in the North Sea. The Piper Alpha platform, operated by Occidental Petroleum, was extracting oil and gas from the Piper oil field. It was a vast structure with multiple modules, including Module A for drilling operations and Module D, which housed the control room and living quarters. At the time of the incident, 226 crew members were aboard, working to extract 125,000 barrels of oil daily, though production had been reduced from the usual 360,000 barrels due to ongoing maintenance. Concerns had been raised by senior staff about the risks of continuing operations during the refurbishment, but Occidental assured them that safety precautions were sufficient. On the morning of the tragedy, routine maintenance was underway on a critical condensate pump located in Module C. Pump A was taken offline, and its essential safety valve was removed. A temporary seal was loosely installed in its place, but a critical miscommunication occurred, leaving the night shift unaware of this change. Disaster struck at 9:45 p.m. when Pump B malfunctioned, and workers unknowingly restarted Pump A without its safety valve. Pressurized gas escaped from the temporary seal, producing a deafening hiss before igniting into a catastrophic explosion that sent flames skyward. The blast penetrated fire-resistant barriers, triggering a chain reaction of ruptured pipelines and secondary explosions. In the control room, operator Jeff Ballin managed to activate the emergency shutdown, briefly halting production. However, the force of the explosion had already thrown workers in Module D from their beds. Critical safety systems failed, including the alarm and fire suppression system. As temperatures soared to 1,000 degrees Celsius, desperate workers resorted to using yogurt to soothe their burning skin. With the control room obliterated, survivors were left to make an impossible decision: remain in the fire-engulfed platform or leap into the frigid waters below. Training had warned against jumping due to the dangers of impact injuries and hypothermia, but many still chose to take the 175-foot plunge, while others stayed inside what they believed to be a fire-resistant shelter. Of the 87 who stayed behind, none survived. Despite the raging inferno, neighboring oil platforms Tartan and Claymore continued pumping fuel to Piper Alpha, exacerbating the situation. Operators were hesitant to halt production for fear of economic repercussions. Eventually, an anonymous worker took it upon themselves to cut the supply. Rescue efforts were severely hindered by the extreme heat and thick smoke. Helicopters and ships struggled to get close, and high-pressure water cannons couldn't be used at full force, as they might harm any survivors. As the night progressed, the structure's integrity deteriorated. At 11:45 p.m., major sections of the platform, including the drilling derrick and a crane, collapsed, and within an hour, the accommodation block housing 87 men disappeared beneath the waves. By the early hours of July 7th, most of the platform had been reduced to rubble, but the fires persisted for over 3 weeks. In late 1988, a dive team retrieved the accommodation block from the seabed. Haunting images captured the moment it was lifted from the water, containing the remains of the 87 men who had followed Occidental's safety protocols, only to meet a tragic end. Of the 226 workers present that night, only 61 made it out alive. Tragically, 2 rescue workers also perished. Many victims were killed instantly in the explosion, while others succumbed to fire, smoke inhalation, drowning, or exposure. 30 bodies were never found. When Charlie Carver's Facebook page announced his marriage to Kayla Brown, his girlfriend, it sparked more fear than joy among his family and friends. Just the day before, both Carver and Brown had mysteriously disappeared. Adding to the suspicion, Brown had left her dog behind, unattended, something entirely out of character. In the days following their disappearance, Carver's Facebook account began posting a series of unsettling updates. Among them were disturbing messages and links to news stories about the missing couple. These posts raised red flags and led authorities to investigate further. Using cell phone tracking, police traced their last known location to the property of real estate broker Todd Kohlhepp. Upon searching the property, they made a horrifying discovery. Kayla Brown was found alive, chained inside a metal crate. Tragically, Carver's body was also recovered at the site. Kohlhepp had abducted the couple, murdered Carver, and then used his Facebook account to post under his name. Gabby Petito, 22, and Brian Laundrie, 23, started dating in 2019, moved to Northport, Florida, and became engaged in 2020. Their dream was to travel cross-country and experience van life. In July 2021, they set off on their journey in a 2012 Ford Transit van, documenting their trip on social media with posts from national parks and landmarks across the U.S. Despite the romanticized portrayal online, tensions simmered beneath the surface. On August 12th, police in Moab, Utah, responded to a report of a domestic dispute. A witness claimed to have seen Gabby slap Brian, who then grabbed her face and pushed her. The couple admitted to struggling with mental health issues, and Gabby expressed fears of abandonment. The police separated them for the night, categorizing the incident as a mental health crisis rather than a criminal matter. Brian unexpectedly flew to Florida on August 17th, allegedly to help his father with a storage unit. Gabby stayed in a Utah hotel during this time. Brian returned to Utah on August 23rd, and the couple resumed their trip, reaching Wyoming's Grand Teton National Park. Gabby was last seen on August 24th, checking out of a hotel in Salt Lake City. Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, last spoke to her via FaceTime on August 25th. Gabby's subsequent text messages raised suspicions, as her mother believed they may not have been sent by her. Gabby was reported missing on September 11th. Brian returned to Florida alone on September 1st, driving the couple's van. He hired an attorney and refused to cooperate with law enforcement. Authorities seized the van, which contained potential evidence. On September 14th, Brian's attorney released a statement expressing hope for Gabby's safe return, but offered no details about her whereabouts. Authorities began a search for Gabby in Grand Teton National Park, where she was last believed to have been. On September 19th, her remains were discovered in Wyoming. The coroner ruled her death a homicide. Meanwhile, Brian became the prime suspect, but disappeared shortly after being named a person of interest. His remains were eventually found in Florida's Carlton Reserve in October 2021, alongside personal items and a notebook. Gypsy Rose and Dee Dee Blanchard. Dee Dee Blanchard and her daughter Gypsy Rose appeared to lead a heartbreaking life that drew sympathy and support from the public. Dee Dee painted herself as a devoted mother, tirelessly caring for Gypsy, who reportedly suffered from a slew of severe medical conditions, including leukemia, muscular dystrophy, and developmental issues. The pair's joint Facebook account frequently displayed updates about Gypsy's health, often accompanied by pleas for donations to support their medical expenses and daily needs. Strangers and local communities rallied around them, offering financial aid, free housing, and gifts. However, the story behind the facade was far more sinister. Unbeknownst to the world, Gypsy was the victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a condition where a caregiver exaggerates or fabricates illnesses in another for attention or personal gain. Dee Dee had been subjecting Gypsy to unnecessary medical treatments, confining her to a wheelchair and convincing her she was gravely ill. From childhood, Gypsy was conditioned to believe she was sick, relying entirely on her mother. Dee Dee isolated her, forbidding her from speaking to others and controlling every aspect of her life. As Gypsy grew older, she began to suspect that her illnesses were fabricated. In secret, she sought solace online, where she connected with Nicholas Godejohn, a man she met on a Christian dating site. Their relationship quickly grew intense, and they began discussing ways for Gypsy to escape her mother's grasp. The pair eventually conspired to murder DD, as the only way Gypsy believed she could achieve freedom. In June 2015, Nicholas traveled to the Blanchard home in Missouri. While DD slept, Nicholas fatally stabbed her, with Gypsy assisting in the aftermath. The two fled to Nicholas's home in Wisconsin. Hours later, Gypsy posted a chilling message on their shared Facebook account. "That is dead." This cryptic post alerted friends and neighbors, leading to a welfare check at the Blanchard home, where DD's body was discovered. Authorities quickly located and apprehended Gypsy and Nicholas. The shocking truth of Gypsy's life emerged during the investigation, revealing years of abuse and deceit by DD. It was discovered that Gypsy had no medical conditions, and she had been forced to live a false life for over 2 decades. Gypsy was ultimately sentenced to 10 years in prison for her role in her mother's murder. Nicholas received a life sentence. Despite her incarceration, Gypsy has expressed feeling freer in prison than she ever did under DD's control. A terrible crime occurred on Halloween night in 1984. Usually Halloween brings harmless pranks and sometimes vandalism, but on this particular night, a pregnant woman was ripped to pieces by what her daughter described as a big bad wolf. This is the story of Dorene Erbert, and here's how it goes. Dorene was a kind and loving woman born in 1952 in Santa Rosa, California. She became a physical therapist who was known for her compassion and kindness. Her husband Charles said she could light up any room she entered. Together they had a happy life in the San Francisco Bay Area. Before meeting Charles, Dorene had been married to Michael Dennis. Mike had some personal struggles. He was born with hearing loss and a stutter that made him feel isolated and insecure. By the time he met Dorene in the early 1970s, he was depressed and had given up on life. But Dorene loved him unconditionally. They fell in love, got married in 1975, and had a son, Paul, the next year. For Mike, Paul was a sign of hope and belonging, but the pressures of being a parent made their marriage tough, and they divorced in 1977. Even though they were divorced, Mike was still a devoted father. Dorene moved on and married Charles Erbert in 1978. They had a daughter, Deanna, in 1979 and seemed to be doing great. But in 1980, tragedy struck when young Paul, who was under Dorene's care, accidentally drowned in their backyard pool. It was a terrible accident, but Mike was filled with anger and blamed Dorene for their son's death. His grief turned into bitterness, and he eventually filed a wrongful death lawsuit against her, which was later dismissed. But even though the lawsuit was dismissed, Mike's anger and grief never went away. He convinced himself that Dorene had intentionally let Paul die. In October 1984, Dorene, who was 8 months pregnant with her 3rd child, was looking forward to a peaceful Halloween with her family. She and Charles took turns trick-or-treating and handing out candy. But that peaceful evening turned into a nightmare when Mike, consumed by years of rage, arrived at their home wearing a wolf mask. When Charles stepped out to run an errand, Mike forced his way inside. What followed was an act of monstrous violence. Dorene was savagely attacked, her unborn child was cut from her womb, and her body was left in a grotesque display. 4-year-old Deanna, who was hiding behind a couch, witnessed the attack and later described the assailant as a big bad wolf. Charles returned to find the door ajar and the horrific scene inside. In a panic, he called the police, who soon suspected Mike because of his history with Dorene. Mike's behavior during questioning only raised more alarms. He claimed a hand injury was from carving a pumpkin, but his story unraveled when investigators discovered blood trails leading from Dorene's home to his house. Inside, they found blood-stained clothing, bloody bandages, and evidence of a hasty cleanup. The investigation revealed chilling details. A search of Mike's truck uncovered blood on the door handle, radio, and floorboards. A blood trail led from his garage to the crime scene. Witnesses reported seeing a man in a wolf costume near Dorene's home hours before the murder. Surveillance footage and alibis cleared Charles of suspicion, further implicating Mike. In Mike's garage, police found disturbing items: 2 handmade wooden caskets, matching the heights of Dorene and Charles, and hand-stitched body bags. Investigators also uncovered a receipt for an 18-inch machete purchased shortly before the murder, which matched the weapon used to kill Dorene. Most damning was a photograph from the previous Halloween, showing Mike in a wolf costume identical to the mask found at the crime scene. The autopsy showed the horrific nature of the attack. Dorene had been brutally stabbed multiple times, including a broken skull and severed bones. Her unborn child had been deliberately taken away. Blood evidence proved Mike's involvement, with DNA matching both Dorene's and his found at the crime scene, in his home, and in his truck. On November 5, 1984, Mike Dennis was arrested and charged with the murders of Dorene and her unborn child. He later pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, saying he was grieving over Paul's death. However, the prosecution argued that the crime had been planned. In 1988, Mike was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. But his sentence was later changed to life in prison without parole because of California's ban on the death penalty. Dorene's family, including her daughter Deanna, struggled to recover from the trauma. At first, they supported the death penalty, but later they focused on forgiveness, hoping to find peace. This is a photo of a Slovakian woman named Mareechi. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary campsite. She's in Nepal, visiting Rambadur Bamjan, the man many believe to be the reincarnation of the Buddha. But behind this seemingly normal photo lies a harrowing story of captivity, unimaginable abuse, and an escape that brought her back from the brink of death. Rambadur Bamjan, better known as Buddha Boy, rose to instant fame in 2005 when he claimed to be the reincarnation of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. But as his fame grew, so did the trail of accusations and darkness surrounding him. Born on April 6, 1990, under a full moon in rural Nepal, Bamjan's arrival into the world was heralded by his mother as extraordinary. She described his birth as accompanied by a shriek like thunder. Even as a child, he was different from others in his village. On May 16, 2005, at just 15 years old, Bamjan began meditating under a peepal tree, mirroring the story of the historical Buddha. He claimed he would remain there until he reached enlightenment. For 10 months he sat motionless, reportedly surviving without food or sleep. There's footage of him on YouTube, where he's just sitting under the tree for days without moving. That region is dominated by Buddhism, so news of this drew pilgrims from across Nepal and beyond. People were desperate to believe. George Saunders, a National Book Award-winning author, visited the Buddha Boy and described his experience in GQ, recounting a sense of divine presence. Documentaries like The Boy with Divine Powers sought to verify his claims, with skeptics questioning the possibility of surviving on prayer alone, while others saw an inexplicable miracle. By the end of 2005, Bamjan had become a global phenomenon, with thousands of devotees flocking to his jungle meditation site. Yet, even then, whispers of skepticism emerged. Some questioned whether the villagers were profiting from the attention. Others noted cracks in the myth, such as reports of him being caught eating or sleeping. Still, the faithful remained steadfast. On March 11, 2006, Bamjan vanished. His followers discovered his meditation site abandoned, the fence surrounding it cut. 8 days later, he reappeared, claiming that the environment had become too disturbed for his meditation. This pattern of retreating into secrecy and re-emerging would become a recurring theme. In December 2006, a herdsman spotted Bamjan in the jungle, carrying a sword. By July 2007, allegations surfaced of him attacking a shepherd with the weapon, nearly decapitating the man. Bamjan's followers dismissed the incident as self-defense, but doubts began to grow. Later that year, Bamjan emerged from a self-imposed underground meditation bunker to address thousands of followers. His speeches preached spirituality as the salvation for Nepal, but behind the scenes, darker events were unfolding. By 2010, the Buddha Boy's reputation had taken a sinister turn. Reports emerged of him beating 17 villagers with an axe handle. The victims, despite their injuries, refused to retaliate, citing their belief in his divine authority. Bamjun justified his actions, claiming he operated under divine law. In 2012, Nepalese authorities investigated reports that Bamjun was keeping two women chained to trees in the jungle. One was a local Nepalese woman, and the other was a 35-year-old Slovakian devotee named Mareechi. Both alleged severe abuse, including beatings and sexual assault. Mareechi's testimony painted a horrifying picture of months of captivity, during which she was tortured and sexually assaulted on Bamjun's orders. She was chained to a tree and starved, only to be given urine to drink. Mareechi's story shocked the international community, but local authorities took minimal action. Instead, Mareechi herself was fined for overstaying her visa. Even Bamjun's family was not immune to his growing tyranny. Concerns arose when Maya Devi, Buddha Boy's mother, grew worried about her 13-year-old daughter Ranjita, who had joined Ram Bahadur Bamjun's spiritual community. When Maya sent her sons to bring Ranjita home, they reported being held at the compound for 5 days before being released, though without their sister. Over the years, Bamjun's community became surrounded by troubling rumors. Some devotees and monks reportedly went missing, raising questions and concerns among locals. In 2018, Bamjun's elder sister, once one of his closest supporters, was found deceased, sparking further speculation about the events within the compound. Allegations of misconduct, including claims of inappropriate behavior, began surfacing, which cast doubt on the once revered spiritual figure. Currently, Ram Bahadur Bamjun, now in his 30s, is under investigation by Nepalese authorities. Once celebrated as a potential reincarnation of Buddha, he now faces serious accusations, including kidnapping and other acts of harm. Janet Mae Johnson's story, immortalized in the New York Times article Ghosts on the Glacier, is one of ambition, mystery, and tragedy. Born on November 30, 1936, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Janet's life was marked by resilience. Adopted by Victor and Mae Johnson, she grew up in a stable but conservative household. However, her life took a painful turn when she was 21. Her adoptive parents discovered that she was gay. In response, they sent her to a hospital to undergo conversion therapy, a discredited and harmful practice that aimed to change her sexual orientation. It was obviously unsuccessful, so they motivated her to move to Denver, Colorado, where she worked hard to build a successful life, earning a PhD in education and pursuing a fulfilling career as a librarian. However, Janet's true passion lay in mountaineering, a pursuit that would ultimately lead to her mysterious and untimely death. In 1973, Janet joined an expedition to Mount Aconcagua in Argentina, the highest peak in the Americas, organized by the Mazamas Climbing Club. Led by Kerry Roy Defoe Jr., a Portland attorney, the group included 7 other climbers from various backgrounds. While some members were seasoned climbers like Janet, others were less experienced, raising concerns about the group's overall preparedness. Despite this, the team set out with high hopes, assisted by a local guide, Miguel Alfonso. The climb began on January 20, 1973, with the group establishing 3 camps between the base camp and the summit. The expedition faced immediate challenges, with some members abandoning the climb early. By the time the group reached higher altitudes, only Janet, John Cooper, a NASA engineer, Arnold McMillan, a dairy farmer, and Bill Zeller, a police officer, remained. Janet's extensive experience made her a key figure in the final push toward the summit. At 21,000 feet, the climbers were forced to stop due to deteriorating conditions. They dug a hole in the snow to shelter overnight, intending to continue the ascent the next day. However, the altitude and extreme cold began to take a toll. John Cooper decided to turn back alone, but he never made it to safety. The remaining climbers pressed on, but soon noticed Janet had fallen behind. When they found her off the trail, she reportedly said, "Don't make me suffer, just let me lay here and die." The group's cohesion unraveled further as Arnold descended the mountain to seek help, accidentally sliding 1,000 feet but surviving with minor injuries. Bill Zeller stayed with Janet but eventually abandoned her, believing she would recover and catch up. Tragically, she never did. Bill later stumbled upon John Cooper's body, frozen and battered, before making his way back to base camp with Arnold. When they arrived, the rest of the team was shocked to learn that Janet and John had been left behind. An investigation in Argentina raised suspicions about the climber's accounts. Janet's body was discovered in 1975, 65 feet from where John's body had been found. Both bodies bore injuries, and Janet's glasses were broken, with a large rock placed on her body. Theories ranged from accidental deaths to foul play, but no charges were ever filed. Later autopsies revealed that Janet died from a brain injury, while John succumbed to cranial contusions and hypothermia. Climbers in 2012 found Janet's camera and undeveloped film. The camera, a small but durable model, contained a reel of undeveloped film that had remarkably survived the harsh conditions of Mount Aconcagua for nearly 4 decades. When the film was carefully developed by experts, the images captured the group's journey, starting with moments of camaraderie at the base camp and progressively documenting the climb as the conditions grew harsher. This is the final photo of her, showing Janet standing and smiling. The discovery of the camera reignited interest in Janet's story and the mysterious circumstances surrounding the expedition. Theories once again surfaced, ranging from the possibility of infighting among the climbers to accusations of negligence or foul play. Some questioned the group's decision-making and why Janet was left behind, particularly when she had been such an experienced and capable climber. On the morning of September 16, 2019, a 3-year-old boy wearing only a diaper was discovered curled up in a cardboard box on the porch of a home on Potomac Avenue in Buffalo, New York. Lois Asperger, the homeowner, had left the box out for stray cats. When she found the boy, he was wrapped in a blanket for warmth. Upon asking him where his mother was, the child replied that his car had been on fire. What began as a simple case of a found child soon unraveled into a horrifying series of events. Buffalo police immediately began searching for the boy's family. Missing person reports were checked, and neighbors were canvassed, but no one recognized the child or knew where he came from. Unable to locate his parents, authorities placed the toddler in the care of Erie County Child Protective Services. Police posted the boy's photo on Facebook, hoping a family member would come forward. Typically, parents or guardians respond quickly in such cases, but as the hours passed with no response, concern grew. Later that evening, around 6 p.m., police received a report of a burned-out car in a wooded area near an industrial park in the Black Rock neighborhood, about a mile from where the boy had been found. First responders arrived to find the fire had extinguished itself, but inside the car, they made a gruesome discovery. 2 sets of human remains, burned beyond recognition. Detectives searched the area and interviewed nearby construction workers, but no one had witnessed anything unusual. Security footage from a nearby storage facility provided the first major lead. In one video, recorded at 2:54 a.m., a man was seen walking along a dirt road toward the area where the car was found. Minutes later, at 3:01 a.m., a second video captured the same man accompanied by another man and a small boy, believed to be the child found on Asperger's porch, running away from the vehicle. In the background, a bright flash, likely the car igniting, could be seen. Enhanced footage revealed one man placing a piece of black clothing over his head and carrying 2 gas cans away from the scene. Meanwhile, a Florida woman contacted Buffalo police after seeing the boy's photo online. She recognized him as her nephew, Noelvin. The woman, worried after losing contact with her brother Miguel Valentin-Colon and his partner Nicole Merced-Plaud, had begun searching social media for answers. Noelvin's grandparents traveled to Buffalo to see him, but the toddler said little about his parents. The family avoided pressing him for information. Authorities determined that Noelvin had traveled from Florida to Buffalo with his parents, 24-year-old Nicole Merced-Plaud and 31-year-old Miguel Valentin-Colon, as well as a family friend, 29-year-old Roman N. Audrifid. The family was last seen alive on September 15, 2019. In November 2019, authorities identified the remains in the burned car as Merced-Plaud and Valentin-Colon. Audrifid remained missing until his belated and burned body was later discovered in a pit behind a house on Box Avenue. Police believe the trio was killed during a drug robbery. Investigators found that cocaine, cell phones, and a minivan were stolen during the crime. A search of the group's hotel room near Buffalo Niagara International Airport uncovered 4.4 pounds of cocaine in a cooler, along with an empty second cooler. Surveillance footage and witness tips led police to Jerry L. Cobb, 47, who, along with 49-year-old DeAndre Wilson, was implicated in the murders. A third man, James Reed, 38, assisted in burning the bodies. Cobb, Wilson, and Reed faced charges of obstruction of justice, among others. The investigation revealed the involvement of 3 additional suspects, Jahan McDuffie, Destiny Bell, and Ashima Clark. All 6 were charged with crimes including narcotics conspiracy, drug distribution, maintaining drug premises, murder during a narcotics conspiracy, and obstructing justice. What began as the discovery of a vulnerable little boy on a stranger's porch ultimately revealed a web of violence and tragedy. Zainab Ansari was a 7-year-old girl from Kasur, Pakistan, whose murder in January 2018 shocked the nation and drew international attention. On January 4th, Zainab left her home to attend Quran lessons at a nearby house. Her parents were away on a pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia, and she was being cared for by relatives. When Zainab didn't return home, her family grew worried and began searching for her. They contacted the police and distributed flyers around the area, but no leads emerged in the initial hours. The case took a significant turn when CCTV footage surfaced showing Zainab walking hand in hand with an unidentified man. This was the last image of her alive. 5 days later, on January 9th, Zainab's body was found in a garbage dump on the outskirts of Kasur. An autopsy confirmed she had been assaulted and murdered. Her death sparked outrage across Pakistan, leading to protests and demands for justice. The people of Kasur, already shaken by reports of previous similar incidents in the area, accused authorities of negligence. The investigation quickly became a top priority. DNA evidence from the crime scene was linked to several other cases of assault and murder in the region, confirming that a serial offender was responsible. The breakthrough came when police arrested a 24-year-old man named Imran Ali, who lived in the same neighborhood as Zainab. His DNA matched samples from Zainab's case and at least 6 other victims, all young girls from the same area. This confirmed that Imran Ali was a serial offender who had been targeting children in Kasur over several years. His victims were between the ages of 5 and 9, and their cases shared a disturbing pattern. The girls would go missing, and their bodies would later be found, showing evidence of assault and strangulation. He was swiftly tried in an anti-terrorism court, where he was convicted of Zainab's murder and multiple other crimes. On October 17, 2018, he was executed in Lahore, bringing an end to the legal proceedings. This is Abdul Shakur Ezedi, a 35-year-old pizza shop worker from Newcastle upon Tyne, who for a time became the UK's most wanted man. On January 31, 2024, at 7:25 p.m. on Lesser Avenue, a quiet residential street near Clapham Common in southwest London, raised voices echoed from inside a white Toyota parked outside the Bel Air Hotel. Inside the vehicle sat a 31-year-old woman, her 2 daughters, aged 8 and 3, and her former boyfriend, Ezedi. Their relationship had ended, and although they were never married and the children were not his, Ezedi struggled to accept the breakup. The woman had agreed to meet him that evening to talk things over, and Ezedi had driven 280 miles from Newcastle, seemingly eager to discuss matters in person. However, he had other intentions: revenge. As the mother opened the door to leave, Ezedi raised a bottle filled with corrosive alkaline and hurled it into her face, splattering her eldest daughter in the process. Screaming in agony, the mother and daughter fled the vehicle, clutching their burning faces. Ezedi then reportedly took the youngest child, slammed her onto the ground, and attempted to run over the mother with his car. Her desperate screams drew the attention of several residents who rushed to help. Despite their efforts to stop him, Ezedi managed to flee on foot after crashing his car into a stationary vehicle. The woman and her children were rushed to a nearby hospital. While the daughters escaped serious harm, their mother was left blind in her right eye. Friends described her as a devoted mother whose world revolved around her children. The attack sent shockwaves across the UK, with the public horrified by the cruelty involved. A nationwide manhunt was launched immediately. Authorities released Ezedi's photos and offered a £20,000 reward for information leading to his capture. Originally from Afghanistan, Ezedi had arrived in the UK in 2016 as an asylum seeker. He found work at a pizza and kebab takeaway, where colleagues described him as quiet and unsettling. In 2018, he was convicted of sexual assault against a female friend, but received only a suspended sentence, remaining in the UK due to the unstable situation in his home country. Under mounting public pressure, police combed through hundreds of hours of CCTV footage to trace Ezedi's movements. London, one of the most surveilled cities globally, with 67 cameras per 1,000 inhabitants, became a crucial asset in the investigation. Footage showed him shopping in Newcastle the day before the attack, driving to London, and being spotted across various locations, including Clapham and Streatham, before the attack. Post-incident, he was seen using his bank card to travel on the Underground, buying water at a Tesco Express, and walking with visible burns on his face. Despite numerous tips, Ezedi remained at large. Authorities appealed to him directly, warning that his injuries could prove fatal without medical attention. Weeks passed with no sign of him, leading to speculation that he had fled the city or even the country. On February 9th, police released footage showing Ezedi walking along Chelsea Bridge with a purposeful stride before returning and looking over the edge. After this moment, he vanished. Investigators believed he may have jumped into the Thames River, a treacherous body of water known for strong tides and hidden hazards. Several bodies were recovered during the search, none of them his. Finally, on February 22nd, a passing boat spotted a body near Tower Pier. Though initially unidentifiable due to bloating, it was later confirmed to be Ezedi through his clothing and personal items. An autopsy ruled his cause of death as drowning. Whether Ezedi planned to take his own life from the start or made a desperate decision in his final hours remains unknown. The Lady of the Lake. This is the photograph of Hallie Latham Illingworth and her story in 1937. Hallie was a waitress who lived in Port Angeles, Washington, with her husband, Monty Illingworth. Hallie had endured a troubled marriage marked by violence, but no one could have predicted the horrifying events that would follow. For 3 years, Hallie's whereabouts remained a mystery until a chilling discovery brought the truth to light. In the summer of 1940, 2 fishermen on Lake Crescent stumbled upon a horrible sight, a body floating to the surface, wrapped in blankets and tied with heavy rope. The victim had been strangled, but what made the case particularly gruesome was the body's condition. Instead of decomposing, the cold, mineral-rich waters of the lake had caused a rare process called saponification, turning the flesh into a soap-like substance. This led to dubbing the victim the Lady of the Lake. The body was eventually identified as Hallie Illingworth, thanks to a dental plate recognized by a South Dakota dentist. Investigators quickly zeroed in on her husband, Monty, who had claimed she had run off with another man while he moved to California with a new lover. Evidence mounted against him, ropes matching the kind Monty borrowed from a local store, and witness testimonies connecting the corpse's clothing to Hallie. Monty's trial in 1942 captivated the nation, even overshadowing World War II headlines. Despite his claims that the body wasn't Hallie's, the jury took just 4 hours to convict him of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, but was paroled after serving 9 years. The most likely scenario, according to criminologists, is that Monty and Hallie had a violent altercation that December night in 1937. Monty fatally beat and strangled her, then transported her body to Lake Crescent, where he wrapped her in blankets, secured her with rope and weights, and dropped her into the lake's depths. While rumors suggested Monty might have had help, no one else was ever charged. The Lady of the Lake remains one of the most chilling murder cases tied to the Olympic Peninsula.